Yeah, I'm fired up to get started with you guys. This is going to be a really good call. And I hope it's super educational. I hope there's a bunch of takeaways for you guys too. So why don't we, on that note, why don't we go ahead and get started here? So I'm just going to get into a little bit about me. Guys, I've worked with busy professionals, gym regulars, athletes, everyday folks for over a decade now. And I'm 31 years old. So I actually started coaching when I was like 19, 20. And, my introduction into the fitness industry, or my, introduction into the human body and, the physicality, the healthy human body, it started with sports. Right? So I played soccer when I was a kid, all the way from like 5, 6 years old up until 13, 14. And then from about 13 years old to 17 years old, I played football, and I was like really, really serious about it. Um, Once high school was over, though, I started getting really serious about lifting weights. Okay, that became the main priority, the main thing that I was focused on in terms of my physicality. Um, Eventually, I began experiencing pain and stress in my body that I couldn't really make sense of, and ultimately, I couldn't improve. So I had injuries when I was a kid. I had dislocated shoulders, nerve pain through both my shoulders, back pain, hip pain, knee pain, foot pain, ankle sprains, and it just got exacerbated once I started lifting weights. It got exacerbated like the deeper I went into it. Right. So it's just been years and years of experimenting with different alternative systems, frameworks on myself and clients, just finding ways to help myself, right? Because it was at a certain point, it was something I literally could not make sense of. I didn't know where to turn and what to do, right? Um, and people work with me to overcome chronic fatigue, nagging injuries, muscle imbalances, mind-body disconnections, all sorts of stress-related issues. So I've been helping people with their pain as this whole journey has gone through. But the point that we're at now, like the essence of the flow op system, it's just way more potent than anything I was doing 3 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago with clients. Just so much of us are experiencing this chronic pain and fatigue as we're talking about now, right? Like it is a commonplace thing in society. So you're not alone if you guys are feeling that. Um, what I see: neck pain, upper back pain, lower back pain, like all the time. That's something I see with almost everybody. Poor recovery, we've been talking about it. The chronic stress and anxiety is also a big deal. Look, at the end of the day, we live in a high stress society. Um, we can really break it down. We start looking at like food quality, air quality, soil quality. Everything's so fast paced, social media, in our face, blue lights. Like there's so many different factors on top of relationships, work expectations. It's that like, we're going through a lot. Modern humans are going through a lot. There's also that information overload. Like, I'm going to say one thing and then the next person's going to tell you something else. Or I'm going to say the XYZ is how we're going to go and fix these problems. And then the next person's going to say ABC and then DEF. The next guy's going to say something else, right? So it's kind of hard to actually like differentiate what's right and what's wrong, or what route is correct for me, right? Um, and furthermore, guys, like a lot of the solutions, a lot of things that people are going to put to the table here are ultimately fragmented, right? So it's addressing a symptom of what we're feeling, but not necessarily getting to that root causation of why we're feeling what we're feeling or why we're experiencing what we experience. Right. Again, we break this thing down just very simply right now, guys. We're not going to get into it in detail, but the three pillars are breathing mechanics, biochemically and biomechanically, body alignment, and our posture. I use that word posture kind of loosely, guys, but like our center of mass and how we orient ourselves in space. Okay. And the regulation of the nervous system, ultimately the state of our nervous system, the health of our nervous system. Because like at its core, these are the three things that is different about flow ops, and it's what we prioritize. Right. Of course, there's other things that we're going to look at within the human body, your lifestyle, the capacity, emotions of joints, the capacity of different tissues, whatever. But everything kind of like builds off of this tier: breathing, body alignment, and the nervous system. Okay. So if you guys don't believe me, like if you've checked my Instagram highlights, we got hundreds of testimonials like this. But if you don't believe me, let's go and just kind of dive into a couple of my clients here, some recent success stories. So we're going to talk about Malachi first. He's from Ireland, and we worked together for about 4 months. I'm still in touch with him quite often, but he came to me with like crippling sciatic nerve pain. If anybody's experienced sciatic pain, like it's pretty bad, like down your butt, down your hamstring, the lower back, like it's very uncomfortable. Right. So he was dealing with a lot. He was quite stressed and anxious as well. And like I said, after working with him for about like 4 months pretty closely, massive, massive improvements in his sleep quality, the kind of pain feedback that he's getting, just his confidence as a man. And he's back to lifting weights. And it's not just that he's back to, like, he's lifting weights. He wasn't lifting weights before. So let's just kind of look at what he's saying here. On a side note, I really think the work is game changing. Hitting the base stuff, and when he says base stuff, that's what the flow ops work, right? Like the three pillars, right? Hitting the base stuff each day is key. Night and day difference feeling of my body after, right? I've been getting the best sleep of my life recently. Stuff's a game, so he says it's a game changer again. It's night and day difference when I started. His body feels completely different. I can't thank you enough. I'm gonna keep the base work going. I'm still hitting it. And he's saying this shit is game changing. I'm just looking to get out of pain to now adding pounds to lifts. Right. So he's coming to me just like, man, I can't figure out my body. Like everything hurts. He's currently not lifting. He's currently not doing any form of higher intensity training or higher effort training. And then now, right, we get you out of that space. And it's like, okay, there's more. Right. We figure out the pain situation. We figure out what's going on fundamentally with your body. And then I expect more out of you. Right. That's how it needs to be. It's not the end of the line, just figuring out your pain, guys. Um, and now here he's referencing the sciatic pain. Before it would be more of a sharp pain. Right. And he still gets it from time to time, but it's like way less frequent. Right. And also he's not stressing out over it as much anymore. It's an absolute game changer, right? Part of this is like the mental side of how you understand what's going on. You have the confidence in your ability to like manage it, and then not stressing out over it. And we talk about stress; it's so relative to our neurological response, our airway, our nervous system, right? then we talk about our girl Shelby here. Our girl Shelbs from the United States. Um, we've worked together for about a year now. But hypermobility and chronic fatigue. Okay, these are the big things that she's dealing with, like system-wide pain throughout the entire body. So like everything kind of hurts, right? But she's seen a significant decrease in joint pain, increase in energy. She's motivated. She's able to lift weights. She wasn't lifting weights before, and she can even go on light jogs comfortably. Right? She's diagnosed with asthma too. So just reading what she said here, since she started weight training, right, and she's been lifting weights for about 4 or 5 months now. She lost 9. She lost 9 pounds. This was early on, and she's officially at a 2-minute breath hold. She's able to hold her breath, and that's after an exhale. After taking a small breath out, she can hold her breath for 2 minutes, which is a great thing for blood oxygen saturation and being able to like breathe slower. Can't thank me enough for the continual support. It's life changing. Feels like an understatement calling it life changing. Just like Malachi said, it's game changing. Another positive here. She tried her first light jog since around the beginning of the journey with me. Before she could only do 10, 30 seconds without the asthma getting way too intense. And she was able to do a jog for like a 3/4 mile. For some of you guys, that might seem like that's not too much. For other you guys, are like, yeah, that's a legit effort. And she's saying it was intense, but she was able to breathe the entire time with minimal stopping, right? Like she was grounded within her effort. It wasn't something that she couldn't manage, right? Even though it was effort. And she finishes here by saying it's a lot easier to find those sweet spots of effort and knowing when to press go or when to stop, right? So these are just some of our like recent success stories. Everyone who's doing flow off is always getting great results. There's always tangible progression, tangible steps forward that we take. So guys, we're gonna do a little bit. We're just gonna do a little bit of an assessment here. Okay. So this is gonna be a little bit more interactive with you guys. Just gonna do a quick check on the chat here. Yeah. So we're gonna kind of go over this a little bit more now. We're gonna talk about how to evaluate where we're at in the nervous system. So we're gonna begin with the stack. Okay. And everything ultimately, like what you guys gotta understand is that everything I'm gonna talk about here today is all connects with one another and are relative to one another, right? So 3 pillars. Pillar 1 relates to 3. Pillar 3 relates to 2. Pillar 2 relates to 1 and 3, right? Like it's everything's intimately connected. Okay. But we're just gonna do a little assessment. So stack, right? You might know what that word means. You might not know what that word means. But in essence, what is the stack? Okay, so we're gonna go look at this picture here on the left, and you see that the skull, rib cage, and pelvis are ultimately sitting right on top of each other, or relatively sitting right on top of each other. I just think like a 90-degree straight angle, right? And what I want you guys to do right now, while you guys are sitting here, and you guys don't have to stand up for this, but what I want you guys to do is just feel that out. Take a moment to feel like, where is my head in space? Where's my rib cage in space? And where is my pelvis in space while I'm sitting down in the chair, standing up, whatever I'm doing, okay? Let's play around with the tilts as we're trying to feel this stacking, this 90-degree stack, skull, rib cage, pelvis. Let's play around with the tilts. Let's play around with the tilt of my skull, up and down, eyes looking up as we tilt the skull up, eyes down a little bit. And we're just trying to find our sweet spot where we can feel the essence of this stack or this positioning, this 90-degree positioning in space, right? Same thing with the rib cage. Let's play around with tilting the rib cage a little bit this way, right? And then tilting the rib cage a little bit the other way. Same thing with the pelvis. Right, so just playing around with it. We don't necessarily have to get a signal that, oh, I'm in the perfect position right now and I know exactly what Eric's talking about. It's not necessarily what I mean, because all this stuff takes time to feel. Like when I ask you guys to make sense of something that we don't fully understand, you don't just get it like that, right? Like it's going to take time for the nervous system to like accept these kind of changes, or for us to be made aware of what we're physically trying to do, right? So take a couple of breaths into that, right? While we're here, let's breathe. We found a relative position where it feels like skull, rib cage, and pelvis are on top of each other, and we're just going to take a couple of breaths into that, see how that feels. What I want you guys to do is take your hand and you're going to place it at the top of your stomach around where the front side lower ribs kind of are, okay? And all I want you to do is take some inhales where you try and perceive the diaphragm, which is around where your hand is. We try and perceive the diaphragm just flatten down as we inhale, okay? And when we exhale, we're going to try and perceive the diaphragm flatten upwards. All right, so there's just this relative motion. Inhale, down, flattening, expanding. Exhale, diaphragm goes up, it domes, it rises, okay? And again, just as I'm talking here, taking a couple breaths, trying to retain this feeling of stack as we do this, getting that feedback of more down pressure from the diaphragm in the stomach, less feeling of forward pressure at the diaphragm or forward pressure at the stomach. Right, so trying to make sense of something that may or may not be new to us, right? But the stack, right? So the connection of our skull, our rib cage, and our pelvis is super important, as well as all the relative organs within these structures. Right, so think about it this way: like that stack is relevant to how these organs expand and compress. Right, it's relevant to the supporting cast of tissues that play a role in us being able to expand and compress. Right, so maybe we were in stack, maybe we weren't. Maybe that was clear for us. Maybe that felt foreign. It's all good. It's just information. We're gonna look at the tongue now, okay? And I want you guys to just type out, like I just said, the word tongue. Right, is your tongue down or is your tongue up? Right, just simply as that. Type in the chat: my tongue's down or my tongue's up. That's what I like to see. Up, down, up. Good. Yeah, you know, everyone who's on this webinar has been following me for a while. You guys know this is something that I talk about. Tongue suction, tongue pressure, crucial. All the way, let's go. That's it. All right, so the tongue is, I mean, it can't really be understated how crucial the tongue is to the airway. So the tongue into the palate, right? Like that is like a base of support for our nose, for our nostrils, right? And baseline breathing. So the way that we're supposed to breathe, like 99% of the time, is through our nose, right? So we got to look at the tongue as and the palate as a supporting cast for nasal breathing, right? And that's like the first place that air has to go through our body to then move down our throat into the trachea, towards the lungs, right? So without, like without this tongue suction, we're not going to get the most out of how we can breathe through our nostrils. We're not going to really open up those cavities and the nasal cavities fully. And again, the tongue positioning is something that might feel a little bit weird for some of you guys, but for a lot of you guys in the chat, it sounds like this is something you guys have been building up. But let's just talk about these three positions here, right? We see these three circles on the palate. What I want you guys to do is swallow, draw some saliva down your throat, and then create a sucking effort into the palate. Right, and as you guys create this sucking effort, don't overthink it. It's quite literally a sucking effort into the palate. We suck up and back. The suction back is going to really help you with this circle here. This circle here is the positioning, guys, of the back of your tongue making contact with the palate. Right, that's the hardest part for like 90% of people, being able to feel the back portion of their tongue making contact with the palate. Right, swallow again. Okay, just kind of as we're working on creating suction right now in the palate, I want you to just swallow every 5, 10, 15 seconds. Okay, just to kind of reaffirm the tongue position, reaffirm that awareness of where your tongue is in space in your mouth. And we're just going to continue to build up this feeling of suck. Right, in particular, working on this back portion. Right. The middle portion seems to be relatively easy to feel. Same with the tip of the tongue. So if we're suctioning up and back enough, we're really feeling that effort, right? And it's going to be associated, guys, with some feedback behind the chin. Just so you know, you're going to feel some tissues light up if you're really getting the back of the tongue firing or sticking, contorting to the palate, okay? And then these middle circles, so the middle of the tongue and the tip of the tongue, right? That's going to be a little bit more pressure-based. So what I want you guys to do is now that we're sucking the tongue, we're swallowing every like 10, 15 seconds, right? But we're sucking. We're going to start building up a pressure effort, right? So when I say pressure, think like force. You got to understand force and suction are almost two different things, right? So we're going to take that middle part of our tongue and especially the tip of our tongue. We're going to start applying pressure up and forward into the palate. And we're really going to direct that into that tip portion of our tongue, guys. So it's going to be right into the hard palate, right above or right behind these top middle teeth. Okay, so it's going to be the hard part of your palate. It's going to feel more rough there, and we're just going to start applying pressure. Okay, start building up that feeling of pressure. You guys might even feel a little bit more of this sensation behind the chin as you do that, as you start building up that tip of tongue pressure. Just make sure that the tip of your tongue isn't physically touching the back of those top teeth. That's very important. It shouldn't be touching the back of the top teeth, but it's going to be very close, guys. Okay. So we're starting to build up this feeling tip, middle, back of the tongue. It's sticking to the entirety of the palate. We have some relative suction effort, and there's some good relative pressure that we're building up. And I'm just going to get you guys for 1 minute here. I want everybody to swallow one more time before we do this. Swallow, retain this feeling of suction. And as you attempt to retain this feeling of suction for 1 minute, guys, you're going to push with like 75 to 100% effort through the middle and the tip of your tongue, just applying as much force as you can up and forward into the hard part of the palate. As you do that, don't lose that cueing of suction in the background. So you're not pushing so hard to the point where you lose your awareness of the suck effort into the palate. You're just really getting to work here. If you're feeling your tongue working hard right now, give me another 30 seconds. And again, don't apply so much force that you lose your suction. Trying to find that sweet spot where I'm suctioning the tongue, it's fully contorted into the palate, but I'm really starting to build up that pressure and force element. And just 15 more seconds like that. And guys, lots of feedback behind the chin here, not just the tongue itself. And you guys can relax there. And as we relax, I still want you to relatively feel the tongue up right now, but we're not suctioning with as much effort. And we're definitely not applying as much force. All right, so what we did there was just kind of to get you to like feel the tongue and how it can be working, how it should be working. But when we apply that max force or that maximum pressure, understand that's not like an all the time thing. But I'm not saying that like your tongue is just firing super hard all the time and it's a very loud thing kinesthetically on the body or on the nervous system, because it's not, right? But we'll learn how to build up that effort over time, right? Ultimately, the fundamentals of suction, pressure, and these contact points is kind of where it all begins. And I'll even add one more little thing to that, guys. As you feel this effort of suction, there's going to be a light feeling of the tissue on the inside of your cheeks, suctioning and kind of moving towards your teeth. So again, it's all the skin on the inside of the mouth. It's moving towards the midline of your mouth. It's going to be a light feeling, right? I can go and exaggerate the heck out of that right now. If I go and do this, we'll just do that for 30 seconds. Just really exaggerating the feeling of the cheeks suctioning towards the inside of the mouth. You're gonna feel a lot of activation through those cheeks, a lot of effort. Just 15 more seconds, guys. Yeah. And then we'll pull the brakes off that. We'll relax. Let's swallow, and then just build up a relative effort of suction. And just see as we suck up and back into the palate, see if we can just sense a little bit of that suction from the inside of the cheeks. Or can we perceive that? Again, it's okay if we can't. Right? A lot of this stuff takes time to start building out the sensory language, start building out the feedback that we need. So we spent a little bit of time there on the tongue, guys, but just going to kind of jump onto the nervous system here. So, I mean, at the end of the day, and I know you guys already asked me this question, right? Like at the end of the day, the biggest predictor of the state of our nervous system or where we're at is going to be relevant to how fast or how slow we're breathing. Right. And there's ultimately going to be more to it. And there's other ways we can look at it, like sympathetic tone in a tissue or more parasympathetic tone in a tissue. Like that's almost like another thing. But at the end of the day, you don't want to be over breathing. Right? You don't want to be breathing super fast. Right? There's going to be contextual situations in life, especially when we're doing things at higher effort or higher activity. Right? Like we're sprinting, we're dealing with like a really heavy weight, whatever. Like those type of things. There is that context of like, okay, we are going to be playing around with sympathetic nervous system, but at the end of the day, that's not our baseline, right? So like there are these higher stress moments in life, but baseline is we need to be chill, right? We need to be in like that rest and digest state, parasympathetic nervous system most of the time. So what I want you guys to do is for 30 seconds here, we're just going to breathe. Okay, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a countdown, but every time you inhale, you go through an inhale and an exhale, right? That's a breath cycle. Every time you go through a breath cycle, you're just going to count in your head, okay, that's one breath. Right, so every inhale, exhale, one breath. Another inhale, another exhale, that's two breaths. Okay, and you're not going to try and force anything here. You're just going to try and do what your body is intuitively doing. I don't want you to go out of your way to breathe a certain way. Just feel how fast or how slow you're breathing over the course of 30 seconds. So I'm going to give you guys a little countdown here, a 5-second countdown. And then, like I said, you're just going to count how many breaths you do over the course of 30 seconds. Okay, close your eyes, look down in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So just 30 seconds, guys. We'll count how many breath cycles we do. Mm-hmm. So that's about 30 seconds there. Yeah. What I want you guys to do is just type in the chat how many breaths you guys got over the course of 30 seconds. Yeah, lots of 4s. Good. Yeah, everyone's taking 4 breaths. Not bad. Okay, we got a 7, we got a 3.5. Some 4s. I just want to remind anybody, if your audio is on right now, please mute yourself just so there's no other like noise in the background for the rest of the participants there. Awesome. Okay. So again, guys, when we're breathing, like 4 is actually a pretty good number. And I wonder if a lot of us are getting this kind of number because A, you guys follow me, you guys listen to what I have to say, and B, we've already done some work on the tongue, which is definitely going to soothe the nervous system. We've done some work on stack, but anywhere from like 3 to 4 breaths over the course of 30 seconds is perfect. Like we're just sitting here, right? We're just sitting here. We're not physically active right now. I'm not sprinting. I'm not running. I'm not doing any intense kind of activity. We're at rest ultimately. So you guys taking like 3 or 4 breaths is perfect, right? I saw a 7 there, right? 7's a little bit high. That means we're taking like 14 breaths over the course of a minute, right? And it's again, this is a different story if we're like doing something that's active. Of course, we're relatively, and there's a spectrum for that, right? The more active it is, the more higher that demand is, the more breaths we're going to take over the course of a minute at the end of the day, right? But again, like the big thing is being able to come down from those efforts. The big thing is being able to understand baseline. So for everyone here that's got like 3 or 4 breaths over the course of that 30 seconds, it's perfect, man. And like I said, that's when we talk about the nervous system, like that is the easiest predictor of where we're at. Right? We don't want to be overstressing, especially in situations where there's no contextual need to be stressed out, right? And I've done assessments with people where these numbers are like very high. I've done assessments with people before where over the course of 30 seconds, they're getting like 11, 12 breaths in, right? So you can imagine the kind of like compounding stress that like someone in that kind of situation is in, right? And then furthermore, how fast that person's going to be breathing when they actually do have to produce more output or produce more force or do something more intensely, right? So again, a lot of you guys are getting some pretty solid scores here, which is great. You're not stressing out right now. Nobody should be stressing out right now, right? We're on a webinar. You guys are listening to me talk. You guys should be breathing relatively slow, okay? So we're just gonna kind of move on and like dive into some of this stuff just a little bit more, right? 3 pillars in particular. So again, breathing, we gotta understand like it is the most basic, ongoing, and fundamental movement that we do, right? Like breathing's a movement. People forget that, right? We inhale. We have, well, before I even talk about that, right? We have these different pressure cavities in our body, right? Our skull and neck area, our rib cage, our core, and our pelvis, our pelvic floor, right? We can look at those 4 structures as pressure cavities, right? And there's relative organs and tissues within those pressure cavities, right? So when we inhale into those spaces, there is some degree of expansion happening as well as motion happening, right? And when we exhale, there's that same degree of compression. There's the opposite, compression. There's a squeeze happening through those structures, through those tissues and organs, right? And when we have the ability to do that, right, in a sound way, where the inhale and exhale, that simple motion, right, bigger, smaller organ motion, when we have the ability to do that properly, man, it makes everything else so much better. Right? It's hugely going to impact our energy, our focus, and performance levels. So when that's unobstructed, guys, right, we're going to quite literally be able to pump blood. We're going to be able to pump lymph through our body like way more effectively, right? As opposed to when there's a stagnation and we can't fully descend the diaphragm, right? Or we can't fully engorge the lungs, or again, we can't fully pass air through our throat, right? Like there's not enough suction through the tongue. There's not enough like awareness, or not awareness, but capacity through the nostrils, right? So like we can look at like the entire torso from skull to pelvis as one entire section of the airway, right? It's not just like my nose or my mouth or just my lungs or just my diaphragm. It's the entire thing. The entire thing's the airway, guys. And like I've been alluding to and mentioning, it is heavily linked to the nervous system and to your posture slash body alignment, right? So like all the pillars connect to each other. Breathing is autonomic, guys. What does that mean? Movement and posture is autonomic. When I say the word autonomic, I just mean subconscious, right? Yeah, and just checking the questions here: head, tongue slash throat, rib cage, pelvic floor. So think of the head and the throat as like one pressure cavity, right? Then the rib cage is another pressure cavity. Then your core, right? So like your stomach. Think about all the organs in your stomach. There's a lot in the stomach, right? And then the fourth is the pelvic floor. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So again, breathing is relative to body alignment. Body alignment is relative to breathing. Nervous system is relative to both. Okay. Yes. Core is the one that we're missing here in terms of that description. So we're just calling a pressure cavity a structure. So really, when I say pressure cavity, it's just a structure that's like housing organs or housing tissues relative to the airway. Right. So like skull, like brain, tongue, right? Rib cage, lungs, heart, stomach, all the organs in your stomach, your pelvic floor, your sphincter, your pelvic floor tissues. Oh, there's like so many muscles down there. So again, breathing kind of has to be pillar one, because without a focus on breathing, like we can't really get to the other places. We can work body alignment, our nervous system in like isolation, but without working on the fundamentals of like, I understand how important breathing is and the fact that organs move, they expand, they compress, pressure cavities get bigger, smaller. Like it begins with that, guys, right? And this is kind of one of the fragmented issues with the industry, is that, you know, we work on these individual parts, but we don't understand that like the breath is kind of what guides that, right? And it's because the breath is autonomic, right? Like you're always breathing, even when you sleep. So the pillar two is our posture, right? Our body alignment. So how we hold ourselves up against gravity. That's ultimately what posture is, right? It's a reflection of how balanced we are in our body. All right. So when we talk about stack, just go back to stack for a moment. That 90-degree position, skull, rib cage, pelvis, all being relatively on top of each other, right? Like that is a way to describe our center of mass in space, right? Like we want the center of mass of all those structures to be relatively balanced with the rest of our body, right? So underneath the pelvis, we got our legs and feet, right? So there should be some balance, not too far forward, not too far back in space. And we're trying to make sense of what the stack is, or we're trying to make sense of where our center of mass is, right? And there's positions that the body is going to get into. There's exercises that we're going to get into that are going to bias like different shifts of that center of mass, right? But the thing is that we still want to make that happen in a balanced way, right? So even when we're doing something where our center of mass might shift a little bit more back, for example, like a hinge, right? We're bending at our hips, or maybe something where our center of mass is shift forward, right? Like there's still going to be those relative, the tilts and the stacking of our skull, neck, rib cage, pelvis are all going to be relatively balanced within one another. So that regardless of whether our position is biasing a shift back or a shift forward, right, we still have access to the airway, right? And all those tissues relative to organs moving, pressure cavities getting bigger and smaller are still contained, right? We're still like contained within our midline and our center, regardless of what positions we get ourselves into. And there's an infinite amount of different positions, options, and potentials that we can get into. Right? Like I said, just want to do it in a balanced way as we increase the options that we have available to us, as we get better at like different skills, as we become more well-versed, as we increase our capacity, right? Now, the thing is, like most of us guys, especially when we've been disconnected to these parts of our body for a while, or, you know, like we've been feeling pain for a while, we've been feeling stress for a while, or, you know, like our posture and our alignment's been deteriorated for a while, we have to improve sensory and proprioceptive awareness to the working tissues relative to our center of mass. So like where we are in space, as well as the airway, right? And we do that through language, right? Like some of the language that we maybe talked about today when we were working on the tongue. I'm trying to get you guys in your senses. I'm trying to get you guys to feel something proprioceptively that maybe we're not so attuned to, right? So we definitely can use language to improve sensory and proprioceptive awareness, but we also use tools, right? So like balls with air pressure in them is a great way. You can like put it at different parts of our body. Even just like hand feedback, like putting our hand on a part of our body is a big deal. We're immediately going to improve sensory awareness of whatever we're feeling, right? Different tools, like we can use a massage gun, not necessarily to like massage a tissue, but again, to create more feedback, sensory awareness into that spot that we're trying to make more sense of. Sandbags, kettlebells, like just stuff like that, right? So we can use tools to also enhance the feedback that we're getting. And this is big because everybody has those spots in our body that are like a little bit locked up, right? We just can't really sense it properly. So giving ourselves the opportunity to sense it properly is part of this process, right? It's not just like, okay, here's my stack, right? And here's how I'm supposed to breathe, or here's how I want to like, you know, not be in that fight or flight state, right? By slowing down my breath and managing stress. It's not just that, because without the feedback, without that proprioceptive sensory feedback, yeah, awareness of the body in space, right? We can never fully get there. Right? Or we're getting there, we're manufacturing a position, but we're not truly there. Okay. And number three is nervous system regulation, right? So most of us are in low grade chronic state of fight and flight, right? That's the sympathetic nervous system, right? That like high stress stuff that I'm talking about. This compounds our breathing issues, postural issues, how we recover. We're going to feel way more fatigue in the body too. So and think about this, when we have access for parasympathetics, right, and that's essentially the opposite of sympathetic, right, rest and digest, as well as having an ability to tolerate higher grades of stress without going into overdrive sympathetically. So like we can tolerate more without over stressing, right? It's like, so if I pick up a 20-pound dumbbell right now, there's gonna be like some degree of stress, right? But I don't want to like freak out, right? But when I have a 100-pound dumbbell, my hand is gonna be like way more stress, right? And it's okay to enter some degree of sympathetics when we need to, right? Uh, but being able to like flow in and out is going to create way more space for better recovery because we know what our baseline is, right? And we trust our baseline. Like we just feel more relaxed and settled within our own body on a day-to-day basis. We're sleeping better, we're recovering better, and we don't feel that like worry, right? We can, if we need to, we can stress, right? We can effort ourselves at a high degree, right? Because we can get back, right? We can flow in and out. And when you can recover properly, like there's just way more force and output generation that you can create against that 100-pound dumbbell or while you're sprinting or whenever you're doing something intense because you're actually recovering properly, right? You're not in this state where like you can't sleep well. You're not in this state where you're not digesting well, right? If you're stuck in fight or flight, it's going to affect your gut health as well. Right, you're going to be breathing like way faster as we kind of went over in the assessment at the beginning. So we need parasympathetics, that's our base. We need that to relax. We need that to come down. But part of being able to build out that ability of like healthy parasympathetics is also being able to access stress state, right? And that flow of back and forth. We understand what baseline is, but we're not afraid to work either. We're not afraid to effort ourselves either. We're just gonna go over a couple actionable tips here, guys. Breathing slower, right? So just light and slow breathing right now. We've been kind of going over the slow breathing throughout this whole call, but I want you guys just to take a couple minutes here, like 2 minutes. As you and again, just mute in the background anybody who's got their audio on. Yeah, Marcos, you can mute yourself, man. But breathing slower, guys. Like I said, light and slow. Essentially, what we're going to do is feel our nostrils taking in that air very lightly. Okay, so it should be completely quiet, no noise associated with that. Then as we exhale, same thing, completely quiet and no noise associated with it. So we're just gonna do this for like 2 minutes here. And I want you guys to find a sweet spot where it feels like you're efforting yourself somewhat in terms of the length of your breath, but it's still manageable. So for some of us, that might be like an inhale that takes 4 seconds and an exhale that takes 4 seconds. That might be slower than usual. And that might feel like a little bit of an effort, but we can do it. Right. Or for some of you guys, that might be like 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, 7 in, 7 out, right? Like just work through a sweet spot here where we're breathing very lightly through our nostrils in and out and relatively slowly. We feel the effort, but it's something that we can manage. But just being able to breathe slower, guys, is one of the most fundamental things of what we do here. And we're just going to go for another minute. And if there's space to increase that effort, maybe we will. Maybe we're starting this at 4 in and 4 out. Maybe we can do a 5 in and a 5 out now. Just patient breathing, guys. Nice and gentle. Let's go for another 30 seconds. So in all cases, we have to work from where we're at. We don't want to like overshoot this because if you guys start breathing at like 20 seconds in, 20 seconds out, it can definitely create a sympathetic and like a stress response, right? So we build up from wherever we're at, and then we slowly try and make sense of, again, higher efforts. You guys will see like a lot of the themes of what we talk about, they just show themselves over and over again. So even just 2 minutes of that, we're at 2 minutes now, you guys should feel like a little bit more chill, okay? And then we're gonna go into deep core breathing. So what I'm gonna ask you guys to do is to inhale through your nostrils, same way that we just did, nice and light, nice and relatively slow. And then you guys are gonna exhale through your mouth. You're gonna purse your lips together, and you're gonna take a long exhale, ideally even longer than you guys just did. Okay, make the exhale even longer than the inhale. You can make some noise here audibly as you exhale. And what we're doing is working hard to push out most of the air out of our body. I want you guys, as you exhale here through your mouth, to try and dump like 80, 90% of the air in your body. Like get a lot of the air out. Yeah. And what it's going to feel like, guys, is your lower rib cage, as you continue to dump that air out, it's going to feel like the lower rib cage is getting smaller. And it's also going to feel like the rib cage itself is moving down and back, right? Down and back as you continue to dump that air out. And we're just going to take one more breath like that, getting a lot of feedback at the end of that exhale, guys, of that back and down motion through the lower ribs, but also a sensation through deep core. Yeah, so definitely connecting with our core right now. Definitely connecting with that exhale. So we can relax there. And that should have felt like a little bit more effortful, maybe even a little bit more stressful. It's because we were using our mouth. That's because we closed the pressure cavity of the rib cage, the core a little bit more. Yeah, and it was higher effort too. Right, I asked you guys to do something that was a little bit harder. So retaining stack-like qualities, we've talked about the stack and how it's like this 90-degree thing, or there's this connection of the skull, rib cage, and pelvis in terms of how they're tilting and orienting in space, right? So again, it doesn't mean that we're moving all the time. We're physically like our spine is in this 90-degree position all the time. That's not at all what I'm saying. Right? What I mean is we want to retain these stack-like qualities, whether we're in a flexive state, an extensive state, a rotational state, a bending state, right? Like we retain this connection, skull, rib cage, pelvis, and all the tissues relevant to that in the airway, regardless, right? So I want you guys to just play around with a little bit of flexive breathing here. We're just gonna create like a light crunch. We're gonna feel rib cage move back and down just a little bit, okay? And then we're gonna go and breathe nice and light and slow through our inhale, and then same thing through the exhale. What should start to become very clear, guys, is back side of the body. Think like mid back, where your kidneys are, even upper back, lower back. There should be some degree of we're filling out the back side of our body, right? And it doesn't mean that we're in some position where our neck and our head is totally disassociated, or like we're just crunching like crazy and our shoulders are moving forward outside of the socket. That's not what I'm saying. Just feel that relative stack-like qualities for another 30 seconds. Lots of awareness on the back side of the body as we inhale. And what it's going to feel like is the skin on the back of our body is actually spreading apart. As the skin on the back of our spine spreads. And then we're going to go ahead and take that, guys, into extension now. Okay, so we're going to shift up our eye position. Our eyeballs kind of dictate a lot of this extensive flexive tone in the spine. But we're just going to look forward. If you feel like there's space to look up a little bit too, that's fine. But what we're going to start doing is breathing the exact same way, just nice and light, in and out through the nose, relatively slow. Find that pacing where it's relatively slower for you, but the effort is still manageable. And what we're going to start to feel is the front side of the body. Like the front side of the rib cage is going to feel very clear. The expansion of the rib cage and the lungs is going to feel very clear, even like the core and the stomach. And the skin on the back of the spine, the skin on the back side of the body, it's tightening relatively towards the middle, or towards the middle of your back. You picture a line down your back, all the skin's tightening towards that spot. And we're just going to take like 1 or 2 more breaths. The front side of the body is relatively clear from this extended position where we're more upright, but I want you to see if you can create some degree of expansion through the back of the rib cage or the back of the core. Right, it's a lot harder to feel the back side of the body when we're operating from extension, or it's a lot harder to feel the expansion of the pressure cavities or the expansion of the organs on the back. Like I said, again, front side should feel very clear. You guys should feel more broad on the front, nice and easy. And then we're going to go just talk about like one more kind of thing we can work on here, guys. But tolerating stress while breathing slowly. Like it's not just about breathing slowly. We ultimately have to upregulate stress and effort while we do that, right? So we're going to go ahead and take our hand. We're going to place it in our armpit here. And what you guys are going to do is just go ahead and squeeze the hand. Okay, squeeze your armpit. Your elbow is going to be relatively close to your sides. And you're going to go ahead and breathe light and slow the same way. As you breathe in, you're going to continue to squeeze the armpit relatively. It shouldn't be 100% effort of how you're squeezing your armpit, guys. But it's still a relative effort that we can still breathe relatively light and slow. And what we're going to get a lot of feedback on is the lateral expansion of our rib cage, right? So our rib cage is getting bigger side to side into our hand, into that effort of squeezing the armpit. As you guys exhale, don't lose that effort of squeeze. Don't lose that effort of breathing slow. And what we should be feeling right now is like a higher rate of stress and effort, right? We're like, I'm asking you to contract different tissues in your body right now as you breathe. Your body might be wanting to breathe a little bit faster. That's okay. Work through the relative effort to continue to breathe relatively slow, relatively gently through your nostrils. Heart and lungs getting bigger as we inhale. Heart and lungs squeezing, getting smaller as we exhale. And we're just going to do one more, guys, at the throat here. You're going to take your finger or 2 fingers if you have space, and you're going to place it right in between the collarbones here. I want you guys to create enough pressure to where it feels relatively uncomfortable, right? Like where I'm jamming my finger into my throat, right? So it's actually making it harder for me to breathe. The only way for me to work against this is for me to engorge this space and for me to fill out my body. As I create this pressure, I want you guys to attempt to pinch the inside of the collarbones towards your finger here. And as you guys do that pinch of the collarbones inward, it's not going to take you into like a flexive position. Your shoulders shouldn't go forward. What it's going to feel like if you get it right is like your collarbones are actually broadening and getting wider. So we pinch the finger, collarbones feel wider, upper chest feels wider. And we're just going to breathe into that space. Suction your tongue, guys. Breathe down your throat. You're going to feel your neck, your throat get bigger. See if you can perceive depth perception because your throat is inside your neck. See if you can perceive that depth perception of the space getting bigger. And you're going to try and pull the top of your lungs underneath that finger into your throat as you inhale. So like really trying to get that upward ascension of the lungs as we inhale, right off the downward flattening of the diaphragm during that inhale. You're still breathing nice and slow here. Just go one more breath, guys. Awesome. All right, so we're gonna go over a little bit of Q&A time here. We've covered a lot. We've went over some actionable tips and exercises, different things for you guys to feel out. So what I want you guys to do, just write out in the chat kind of right now, like what do you guys you guys feel good? First of all, A. B. What are you guys sensing right now? And C. Questions. Please ask them. I got answers. Yeah, finger in the throat was tough, Max. Yeah. Questions, guys. We're gonna wrap this up soon, by the way. But if you guys got a couple questions for me, I would love to answer them right now while we're live. Or again, just even any feedback. Like you guys feel solid. If you don't have a question, that's fine too. You guys feel solid. But my traps get really tight with that last bit and it became harder to focus. Yeah. Yeah, that's a sign that like there's some, like restricted tissues around there, or even tissues that are more sympathetic in nature. It's okay. We gotta like work through some degrees of relative stress to actually downregulate stress. Doesn't mean everything that we do is like super high effort, but we do want to do things that are higher effort and do elicit a stress response so that we can like learn how to manage that stress response as it's happening. A lot of the work, guys, is literally just doing uncomfortable things or kind of uncomfortable things that we just did and having the patience and fortitude to sit with that and like get what you need to get from it. Right. Then over time you can increase that effort within these different things. End goal being we're not restricted by higher efforts. And when I mean high efforts, I mean like legitimate higher efforts, right? Like lifting a heavy ass fucking weight or like sprinting or fighting or jumping, playing a sport, like all that stuff. I just want to make sure I'm getting to enough of your questions here. Feeling great. Really love all this. Just 2 minutes a day of different breathing exercises, how to program. Yeah. Glad you're feeling good. Yeah. Even a couple minutes of like breathing and doing this stuff can bring a lot of awareness to the body. I'm not saying 2 minutes is going to like make you figure out your shit, but 2 minutes, 5 minutes is better than nothing, right? Like, there's a lot of feedback we can get from this kind of work. Should I keep the tongue pressed against my palate all the time? Just remember that it's not just pressure, it's also suction. Right? It only kind of starts with suction. And once you understand suction, it's like then we want to build up pressure over time. Okay, but yes, unless we're talking, essentially the tongue should be pressed up against the palate or suctioned rather the entire time. Thanks for the content. Does the back of the tongue need to feel like it is having also a light lateral expansion towards the teeth? Yes, yes. There's still right. So the tongue is an organ, right? Like just like lungs, heart, diaphragm, etc. Like there is some degree of relative like bigger, smaller happening as we inhale and exhale, guys. So yeah, definitely feeling like that tongue fill out space in the palate. That's a great question, man. Great question, bro. Look at this guy chatted up with his jaws. Nice work, man. It's the only way I can feel the jaw tissues activated. Yeah. Yeah, and we don't want like the masseters to be like overly like tense, but yeah, we want to feel some degree of like our face is firing. In particular, these tissues behind the chin. That's going to be your big one, guys. Muscles behind the chin working with the tongue. It's going to be coincided, like proper suctioning, proper effort that is going to be healthy for us. You're going to be feeling a relative effort here, okay? When you say stacked tongue, how do you mean? I missed the first part, like mewing. Yeah, I mean, it's really just like those three portions of the tongue, tip, middle, and back, like fully sticking to the palate, man. The universal cues for creating suction is a matter of getting a feel for it. Yeah, I mean, getting a feel for it, man. I really keep using the word suck because it's the best way to describe it. Another feeling is going to be like the frenulum, that strip of tissue underneath the tongue. It's going to feel like it's stretching out, guys, and you really get like some good suction in the tongue. Right, so that's in your mouth. That's happening when your teeth are closed, right? But that tissue there, that's called your frenulum. It's going to feel like it's expanding. Even another thing we can do if anyone wants to play around with it, but like suctioning your tongue down, because like our tongue's normally down, but you can even suction it down. You like suck down into the floor of the mouth, and you're going to feel that frenulum really start to compress and squeeze. Right, so you can just get like some squeeze feedback on the tongue as you breathe, feeling it like fill out through the floor of the mouth. That's going to give you some feedback or in a different way that can help you sense like the expansion and the stretching of that frenulum as well. So this would just be like a drill of like suctioning down. That just be like a feedback drill, right? Again, unless we're talking, our tongue should relatively be up like all the time, right? So breathing to strengthen the diaphragm under the sandbag. Yeah, you want to relax, man. So when you have the sandbag on you, you don't want to fight the sandbag, right? So you're almost like you're letting the sandbag like get heavy into you, and then you're working on this up and down action of the organs as we inhale, out in action as we breathe, right? Inhale, exhale. So yeah, that's a big thing. So we still want to like exhale relatively slowly. We still want to breathe relatively slowly so that we're not sending a sympathetic response to the nervous system. But yeah, physically, we don't want to be like fighting the weight forward when it's on top of us. Yeah, the recording is going to be sent out via email. Pelvic floor, so like sensory feedback for the pelvic floor, like plow ball around like the perineum at the very bottom of the pelvic floor. Like that's going to help us with feedback. Specific language for the pelvic floor, but also even like it's stack. We can go back to stack, right? Like the way rib cage and pelvis communicates with each other, and like those tissues of like the core, the front side, the back side, the inside, and how they can all like relate and connect with each other. That's gonna really affect the pelvic floor diaphragm. So like think about it this way, guys. Proper breathing isn't like pelvic floor. It's not diaphragm. Proper breathing is just everything coming together. Proper breathing is my pelvic floor. I inhale, my pelvic floor expands in all directions and it comes up. As that happens, my diaphragm goes down. As that happens, my lungs go up. As that happens, my tongue is subtly expanding against the palate. As that happens, even the sutures of my skull, there's like subtle bits of like expansion that eventually we'll be able to sense too when we inhale through there. Right. So proper breathing is just the whole system coming together. And then there's that individual nuance of like, what does Abraham need? What does Afif need? Right. Like what you guys individually need? Where do you need more feedback? Whether that's, where you guys need more sensory feedback essentially to kind of tie in the gaps. So correct ribs during an inhale. Yeah. So like your shoulders shouldn't like really raise too much when you guys inhale, guys, but like your rib cage is going to elevate when you inhale. Right? Like and these muscles right here, your SCM from ear to the inside of the collarbone are like relative to you having the capacity to elevate your rib cage. So when I breathe in, when people are talking about like your shoulder shouldn't raise, I'm gonna show you guys a demo of what we don't want to see, right? When we breathe in, like that's not proper breathing, right? This would be more of like a proper breath. I'm gonna inhale now. Right, there's subtle degrees of like, I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's a subtle degree of my rib cage physically elevated, right? Physically elevated a little bit as there was some expansion, right? So like that is healthy. We want to have access for the lungs to fully expand. We want to have access for air to like move into our lungs properly. That's a sign of like our diaphragm is moving down. So we don't necessarily want to restrict that. But yeah, it's important to know that like, there's a nuance of how it's supposed to look and how it's supposed to feel. If we like take a shallow inhale, we just breathe in for like a second and a half or something, and like immediately like our shoulder blades are all the way up. That's not it, right? I'm glad you guys appreciated the content though. Think about like that suction effort in terms of regulating the nervous system. It's like a soothing thing. So when we suction and swallow, we're creating there's some like innervation through the vagal nerves, which is gonna again create that feedback for the parasympathetic nervous system to like light up or like let us know that like we're safe essentially, and that we're not in a stress state. And we first build this, or we're supposed to first build this when we're kids with our mom, right? And we're trying to get breast milk. Like that's when this is supposed to start, right? We use a degree of suction, use a degree of tongue pressure. We start building up that like upward positioning of our tongue. Like that's literally when it's supposed to happen. Day one on this fucking planet, right? So it becomes a soothing thing for the nervous system, right? And over time, what you guys are gonna understand too is that like the better that you can create that feeling, the more like confident you guys are gonna feel. The more relaxed you guys are gonna feel, but then also how it implicates the nasal cavities, right? Like my nostrils are on the front here, but the nasal cavity are like back there. It has a big impact, guys. When you can do this comfortably without creating a stress response, it's like way easier to breathe in through your nostrils because you're actually like widening the nostrils, or sorry, the nasal cavities. You're widening them, so we can pull air in easier. And then furthermore, we can like breathe slowly. We have access for all this stuff. Like we're just creating better blood oxygen saturation too. So there's the blood oxygen saturation element, and then there's also the pumping element of blood and lymph, right? We're trying to get both. Yeah, breathing exercises are going to relax the fascia over time for sure, man. All this stuff is going to relax it over time. Like I said, there is individual nuance and stuff like that. But this is, like I said, guys, this is where it starts. Like, there's a reason why I'm saying that the three pillars are the three pillars, right? It starts with that. And then we can look at like the nuances of other things. Again, like, is your joint like not able to move properly? Which joint is that? What motions does it need, right? Where can we build off that? Right? Or like our global strength capacity or endurance capacity, right? Even like our lifestyle, right? Are we drinking? Are we smoking? How are we recovering? Right? Like stress in our life outside of training, outside of the norm, right? Like there's all these different things that we look at. Nutrition. Yeah, ultimately people need to feel more. Max, that's it. If people can't connect to the pelvic floor, focus on sensory development. Yeah. So like everyone just needs to feel their bodies a lot more. And like a lot of what we did today was just trying to get you guys in your bodies, trying to get you in your senses. So it all kind of starts with that. It starts with our sensory perception, the airway and the nervous system, and how that all comes together like biomechanically and like how we're aligned in space, our center of mass, and then our ability to go through like different positions while still retaining this pump circulation and neurological control without stressing out or unnecessarily stressing out. That makes more sense. And guys, that's it today. I really appreciate you guys for being here. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing this today. Feel free to connect with me on social media if you guys have any questions about anything. Really appreciate you all for being here. And I just want to say one more time, I apologize. We went like in total, we went about 20 minutes longer. I really apologize for that. But I hope there's plenty of takeaways. Guys, reach out if you need anything, but have a blessed rest of your Sunday. Thank you guys.